Hello, and welcome to ISI Insiders, the flagship podcast of edutaining informusement. Because that's what we're aiming for here, to entertain and to inform, and in the process, add something of value to your information diet. Hi, I'm Adam Russell. I'm the director of the AI division at University of Southern California's Information Sciences Institute, or ISI. And I'm your podcast host, serving as your virtual guide as we talk to some ISI insiders, folks from across our institute, to better understand their what, their how, and their why. That is, what they're doing, how they came to be doing it, and frankly, why. I mean, with their ability to go anywhere else, why are they here? Why are they working on this? Why are they working on it right now? You may already know from our previous podcast series, AI Insiders, I pride myself on making sure that our guests are human and not advanced deepfakes. And I do this by asking them questions that would befuddle most AI deepfakes at the moment. It's sort of my equivalent of Blade Runner's Voight-Kampff test. So my guest today, bravely agreeing to come on and tackle some of our Voight-Kampff questions, is Jelena Mirkovic. She's a principal scientist since 2013, as a matter of fact, at the Networking and Cybersecurity Division here at ISI, and I'm very excited to get her take on what's happening out there. Jelena, welcome to ISI Insiders.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
The first question I'd like to ask, and is a bit of a curveball, is I want to sort of tag along with you as you go back in time. I want to listen in as you describe to your, let's say, 14-year-old self, what are you doing today at ISI? Maybe tell your 14-year-old self, how did you get there?
Oh, so how I got here was a set of lucky coincidences, I think.
Okay.
Because at every key point in my life, I really did not have a solid plan what I'm going to do next. So I kind of took some chances and I ended up in exactly the right place for myself. I was studying economics and then ran into computer science as a course in high school and loved it and decided that that's what I'm going to do. Came across networking and loved that and thought, well, this is the greatest thing. That's what I'm going to do. And then, I ended up in a PhD program mostly as a kind of lucky guess at what's the next step. A lot of my peers were doing this like PhD abroad program. And I thought, well, that's maybe something to try. And I tried it and I liked it a lot. I thought, well, what's next? I kind of thought I would like to work for a company. The academic world never really crossed my mind until I started interviewing and, got an offer to be assistant professor at University of Delaware. And then, turned out to be a very good fit for me.
Oh, so I'm hearing a theme. I liked it. And so
Yeah.
That's great. Follow your bliss, as it were. But you still haven't explained to your 14-year-old self what it is you're actually doing.
So what I do is I problem solve. I see a problem that I think is important to be solved, that's not solved yet. I understand what people have done, and then I come up with new ideas that often requires funding. So I write up my new ideas, apply for funding, and then find a team of people to work on this with me. And then we, implement these ideas, try them out, evaluate them, see what works the best, and write it up and present it to others in hopes that this will lead to, more people going in that research direction and coming up with even better solutions.
Cool. You did mention bringing together teams to solve problems. The reason teams sort of work is because everybody has, their own contribution. And the term I like to use is either superpower or almost like a secret power. What do you think is your superpower that you bring to a team?
Oh, this is a complicated question. So I find myself often in the role of team leaders. I have only recently become better at leading teams. I think, when I started, it took me a while to understand how to work with people, just as all scientists. We're better with data and code than people. But I tend to I tend to take on responsibility easily. I buy into the, project ownership, and I really want my projects to succeed. They are my children, so to speak. So I really care about them and invest a lot of effort. And
Mhm.
I prefer working in teams than, working individually, because I find that in a team setting, actually everyone works better, has better ideas. I really cannot produce good ideas in isolation, so I need that discussion, and I need different point of views in order for this to in order to produce something that's a solid idea, and not just something that will easily fall over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I played rugby for a reason. I'm a big believer in team sports more generally, but it does require making room for productive argumentation, diversity of ideas, thoughts. I think this evidence is fairly strong that if you can channel those things, you are much better as a team. Do you have a leadership philosophy of any sort, or you find yourself becoming this leader? And by the way, I've heard that about you as well. That people really do enjoy working with and for you. Um, are you deliberate about your philosophy, or is it just sort of an instinct?
I've only recently again become better at
Hmm.
managing teams, and not just going off instinct. I do have a strong instinct, and I rely on it. That tells me, this is going well or not, or this person is, good in this role, or not. But I've only recently learned how to actually think things through on top of that, and how to create opportunities for growth for people on the team. I think that's important, to
Hmm.
not just take everyone at face value, but to also provide opportunities for them to, do something that is maybe not their strong area of expertise, but something that where they could grow in the future. And
Hmm.
that actually pays off very well.
Have you had results that have been really sort of counterintuitive or surprising to you, where you thought you were going to set off in one direction and you ended up realizing either it was the wrong problem, or, gosh, the results suggest that we need to go in a very different direction?
Yeah, there are plenty of examples like
I
that.
bet
Yeah.
that's true. That's why they call it research, right? If we knew what we were doing, it wouldn't be research.
Yeah. I think one project that we did for a while was looking into authentication, primarily password-based or text-based authentication, and thinking how could we do this better. And so we started that problem backwards. We started designing a solution first, without doing a survey of, this is what people do now, and
Mm.
and and we designed a few solutions, published a few papers, everything looked good. And then, the student was close to graduation, and we said, well, wait, we forgot to do a survey of, users, and understand how they reason about passwords.
Mhm.
So we did that, and we did it in a pretty unique way. All studies to date either looked at the data of leaked passwords, which has no human element, it just does password analysis, or they worked with human participants in a study with a fake server, which introduces bias because it's fake. So we decided to measure what people actually do with passwords by bringing them into the lab, and telling them to really log into a few systems where they have accounts.
Mhm.
And then we would capture that password, and we would transform it in a way that we could not reverse. So we wouldn't know their password, but we would know the composition. We would know if this is like a name and a number,
Mm.
or two dictionary words and a number. So at that level.
Mhm.
And then we also interviewed them, and we got feedback about what they do, what they think they do. And we actually found that people tend to want to do well. They understand how to choose passwords to be secure, but they don't follow through. And this turned out to be there turned out to be a big discrepancy between what they thought they do and what they actually do.
Yeah, there's a great Vox article on people lie about what they eat. It's screwing up science kind of thing. It's hard. I mean, it's not clear they're doing it on purpose either. I mean, people really just want to believe, right, that they are doing the right thing. Yeah, yeah. What do your sort of friends and family think about what you do? Do they know what you do?
Well, my kids are still young, so they don't really know what I do to in great detail other than mom works for USC and, she teaches computer science.
But they're not being lectured about like password strength every dinner time.
No,
Okay.
no, no, not yet. Although there is need, I think, with young people, there is need to teach them about good security habits and also, there are a lot of safety issues around content and social networks that I still think are, cybersecurity researchers should be working on more. But I think my big takeaway from, the study that I described and something that greatly influenced my research that came after was understanding that you cannot force people to do what's right. You have to understand what they want to do and what they can easily do, and then build systems that kind of go along with that.
But what is a big problem in your area of research right now that you think may be solved in 5 years?
Hmm. I thought you'd rather ask me what problem I think will be a big problem 5 years from now, but you're asking about
Okay.
what will be solved. So,
All right. Why don't we ask the first one then? What do you
right.
think is going to be continuing a big problem in 5 years?
I think the problem that we are not addressing well is how humans respond to misinformation. And
Mm,
I think that this is going to be much bigger problem in the future than we think is now. I think right now we're focused only on political misinformation and maybe to some extent health misinformation because that is top of everyone's mind with COVID.
mm,
But I think there are a lot more avenues for misinformation that can be more subtle and more damaging. For example, I could, try to misinform kids that they, don't need to wash hands, or they don't need to brush teeth, or they don't need to listen to their parents, or, bunch of different things. You can take many different examples, but pretty much I can create anarchy in society, and I think that's really dangerous.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the interesting part is how it always. I mean, I'll talk to people in this area, and they'll say, "Well, there are technological things you can help to address it, but there are no solutions, right?" And my intellectual mentor always said, "Remember, there are no solutions; there are only trade-offs." And the problem when you get into this space of misinformation is the trade-off like good information but freedom of speech is how do we navigate those trade-offs? I'm not asking you to solve that problem, but
No,
um
no, but I think that the world has changed and we did not put enough social scientists on this problem. We've put
no
computer
argument there.
scientists, but we need social scientists because I think the underlying issue is that now it is hard to tell who is an expert because we had cues when people would present some information. You look at them, you look how well spoken they are, how
Hmm.
dressed they are,
Hmm.
are they speaking on an official channel? It was costly to do misinformation, governments could do it, but regular people could not. Nowadays, it's much more easy to do, and there are many channels, broadcasts, videos, podcasts, everything. Um,
Yeah.
and there is the confirmation bias that when you hear the same thing over and over again from multiple people, from multiple channels, you start internalizing it and believing in it.
Yeah, and I mean, I see this even with science communication, where real science is uncertain. Real science comes with error bars. Real science admits it makes mistakes and updates, and in a world where we want certainty, There are people who will sell you certainty. Okay, so I have a term that I use. It's called apocalyptimism, which is meant to reflect this idea of it feels like we could be really headed in bad directions. At the same time, we're told, there's sort of this technical synergy is going to occur and we could have some sort of utopic future. Help me be optimistic about the future. What are you optimistic about? What do you think we're going to get right?
I think that I'm optimistic about people, even though people tend to be less optimistic as they age. But I look at, young generations and I find that they are resilient in spite of everything. They somehow know how to deal with this overload of information, and in spite of growing up with all this technology, they are still turning out okay. So I think that we'll be okay in the end. But I think that we have some challenges ahead. And again, I don't think that they are just technological challenges. We are in the technical discipline, so we tend to think that everything just requires better tools, but we need to understand how humans work too.
Go the social sciences. Yeah, I'm with you. As long as it's reproducible, don't get me started. Um, you have kids. Your own biography is really interesting. How you got to where you are now. What advice would you offer younger folks who are interested in getting into generally the area you're in, solving problems, particularly with a technical bent?
I think what we don't communicate well to people that are interested in research is how much time it takes and how much trial and error
Hmm.
it takes. Usually, when you're a junior researcher, you see published papers, you see presentations about those, people winning awards, and you just feel like the dumbest person in the world. And it took me maybe like 5 years into the, career as a professor to talk to someone who's more experienced and much better published than I am. And I talked to that person about a paper that I was desperately trying to publish and it was getting rejected. And, I just didn't know what to do with it. And then he said, yeah, like my papers are getting rejected too. And that was a revelation. It was like, wow, it happens to everyone. We just don't hear about it. So I think that's something that, as people go into graduate school or maybe consider graduate school and later research careers, they just need to understand how much, of the trial and error is there, and there's gonna be some failures,
Yeah.
and you just need to learn from them. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think as a culture, if we could reimagine our relationship with failure, I think we would be better off in some sense. Or we just need new terms for it. I mean, there's failure because you genuinely did something dumb or didn't pay attention to the details. But then there's what I call intelligible failure. You try something, it doesn't work. You know more than you knew before, right? It was not a waste of time. And yet we use the same word to describe both. I'm working on a hypothesis, by the way, looking back at all the other podcasts I've hosted, that people tend to think the best scientists have sort of high IQs, and that's probably true. But they also have something that I think you're demonstrating, which is what I call LQ, learning quotients, right? The best ones are the ones that are trying to figure out how fast they can learn and how much more they can learn. So, Elena, I think we're, running out of time at the end, but I've really enjoyed getting a sense of where that LQ in your case comes from. I'm thrilled that you are at ISI, that you're able to help others develop their LQ, as it were. And I really appreciate, both on behalf of ISI, USC, but also, frankly, the country and the species, the work you're doing to try to help us navigate this narrow corridor between, anarchy and all the other awful options that are out there. I think there is, as you said, there is promise, and I hope we can get there. So great talking to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed talking to you as well.
Thanks, see you later. All right. Well, if you enjoy these short podcasts, please do what really only you can do, or at least we only want you to do, not you deep fakes. We're looking at you. The scoring, the rating, sharing us, evaluating us, subscribing to us is really helpful to give us a better sense of what might be most useful from our edutaining informusement. And so please join us again for another episode of ISI Insiders in the future, where we'll keep exploring, keep learning, keep humanizing all this interesting new information technology to help us navigate our way through this weird, weird world, trying to do what humans can do best when they face these kinds of challenges, working together as if all our lives depend on each other, because they do. So for now, for the future, fight on.